stabbing, infighting and bad blood, then I guarantee you are safe with us. Leading the intrigue as usual, it's the deplorable Darren Grimes, Queen Gammon, Belinda DeLucy and our very own traitor to Britain. I can't believe it's not Butterworth. Unfortunately, it is Benjamin Butterworth. And we have a worthy adversary in the shape of our wonderful guest and GB News superstar, naughty Nana Acquia. And what a treat, by the way, to have two ladies on the panel this week. Lucky me. Now, each pundit gets a minute or two to stand on their soapbox about the issue of the day. And after that, it's a free-for-all. We're not just here to talk amongst ourselves, though. We want you, the viewers, for your input. Send your thoughts and probably your complaints and nasty emails to gbviews@gbnews.com. Let's see if you can outdo our panellists in the opinion stakes. But before we let the dogs out, it's over to Tatiana Sanchez for your Saturday night news.
Ben, thank you. Your top stories from the GB newsroom. 3 people have been arrested under the Terrorism Act, suspected of showing support for a proscribed organisation. They were detained during the pro-Palestinian rally, which saw thousands of people marching through central London, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. Police also arrested 2 people for carrying offensive placards. Yemen's Houthi rebels have promised a strong and effective response following a fresh strike by the United States. The US says it was a follow-up to a joint UK mission targeting Houthi positions. The West is trying to stop the Iranian-backed group from attacking ships in the Red Sea. President Joe Biden confirmed a private message was delivered to Tehran, making it clear the US is well prepared. A former postmistress who's planning to run against Sarah Davey at the next general election says he must be brought to justice. The Lib Dems leader was the Postal Affairs Minister during the Horizon IT scandal, but has refused to apologise or take any accountability for his inaction. Hundreds of staff were wrongly prosecuted after faulty software led to shortfalls in sub-postmasters' accounts. Sarad says he was lied to by the Post Office on an industrial scale. Speaking exclusively to GB News, Yvonne Tracy says she felt compelled to take a stand.
I would have loved it if we could have got a sub-postmaster who'd been affected by this to stand against Ed Davey, but I can understand that probably their confidence is not, and they probably are fed up to death with the government, etc. So I thought, it's going to be me. I'm reluctantly doing it, but I feel I have to do something, and this is all I can do. I think he should be brought to account.
Around 150 migrants have been intercepted in the English Channel, ending the extended pause in crossings. On board 3 small boats, they're the first to make the treacherous journey since the 16th of December, the longest period without any migrant arrivals for almost 4 years. It's thought bad weather may have prevented more people from crossing the Channel over the past few weeks. And a League One football match had to be abandoned today after around 1,000 Reading home fans invaded the pitch. The start of the game was interrupted for 3 minutes when tennis balls were thrown onto the pitch. The referee then had to take players off after 16 minutes as home fans took to the field, with some letting off flares. Many Reading supporters want the owner to sell the club, which is currently 4th from the bottom in the 3rd tier, following sanctions imposed on them by the EFL. Those are your top stories on GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying Play GB News. Now it's back to the Saturday 5.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Ben Leo and I can promise that you're in for a very lively hour. So let's crack on with tonight's first debate, shall we?
Now then, Ben, what have you got for us today?
OK, let's get stuck into this. New year, same old story when it comes to the invasion of our southern border. After boasting yesterday there'd been no small boat crossings in the Channel for 4 weeks, laughably celebrated as the longest period in over 5 years, whoop-de-doo, Rishi Sunak and James Cleverly conveniently forgot that bad weather stops migrants making the journey, and instead they kept up the assumption that, frankly, we're all just stupid. Well, surprise, surprise, the windy weather calms down overnight, and today we have an estimated 150 undocumented illegal migrants touching down in Treasure Island, Britain. They'll be whisked off to a hotel, treated to 3 meals a day, free Wi-Fi, and even a free dentist that many British people find impossible to access. All this, by the way, costs taxpayers an eye-watering £8 million a day. And would you believe it? Images coming from the Kent coast today show not a flurry of women and children escaping war and persecution, but arrivals of mostly single fighting-age men. Well, let me tell you something. Whilst they patronise the British public with promises and stupid slogans, the only people lacking logic right now is the sleepwalking Conservative government, who will lose the election this year if they don't immediately announce a turn-back policy like Australia did 10 years ago. Prime Ministers Tony Abbott and Scott Morrison intercepted dinghies in the ocean, put migrants on unsinkable lifeboats and either sent them back to where they came from or to offshore processing sites. And do you know what happened? The crossings stopped immediately and Abbott won re-election. So look, forget Rwanda, it's finished. Stop Keir Starmer and show you care about Britain by declaring the small boats crisis a national security threat and send those boats back directly where they came from. That's my say. Benjamin, what do you reckon about that? Let's turn these boats back.
Well, the stupidity of your argument, and I'll sort of narrow it down to just one stupidity, is that
Very
you
polite.
can't turn these boats back unless you have a deal with France, which is exactly what Keir Starmer has said we should have. Because if you're not working with them, if they're not on the same page as you, then it's no point turning them back because they'll just come straight back again.
Well, they won't. If we've got Navy ships in the middle of the English Channel, physically stopping them from crossing that 12-mile border, what are they going to do?
Good luck lining 12 miles with Navy ships for tiny little dinghies that are...
Well, why not? We're happy enough to get
channel.
involved in the Red Sea and play world police in the Gulf of Aden and the Suez Canal. Why can't we protect our own borders?
So, to clarify, you're saying that the RAF should bomb the boats. I mean, what's it got to do with the Red Sea?
We never mentioned bombing.
Well,
Who
that's
said
what
bomb?
we're doing in the Red Sea.
You're being hysterical again,
No, you're being
per the
hysterical by
left.
comparing the Channel to the Red Sea, where terrorists are attacking British and Israeli and American boats.
Well,
It's nothing like that. The truth is, you'll just come up with ever more hysterical ideas to shoot and attack and be violent and win plaudits, when actually the sensible idea is to sit down with the French and have a proper
Worst idea ever. Worst idea ever. The idea that the solution lies with the EU, who is incapable of dealing with the migrant crisis itself. That is why the EU is turning to the far right. That is why they are losing control of their borders, because they can't cope. The idea we look to them for lessons, guidance and help is ridiculous. What we need to do, yes, in part, absolutely, turn the boats back safely to France, to the safety of France, is one idea, but it will not stop, Ben. It will not stop until we raise the bar of who gets accepted as an asylum seeker in this country. We accept 3 times as many as France, twice as many as the national EU. We are over-generous. We provide them with 3-star hotels, as you said, dentistry, all this stuff. It needs to stop.
It's the life of Riley. Did you see that lad there in the hotel counting out his cash in front of the
Just put them in tents like they do in Calais.
Darren, hysterical Benjamin here thinks that Australia couldn't have possibly have turned the boats back. We can't copy them. They did it, and the boat stopped in their tracks. Why can't we do it?
Well, they had these beautiful orange lifeboats that were unsinkable that they placed migrants in and then turned them back or sent them to be processed elsewhere, and they never made it to Australia. So whilst I don't think anyone was trying to suggest for a second that we should stop throwing missiles in the English Channel, which may well hit parts of our own territorial waters, so that would be somewhat reckless. But I think that there is an obvious...
No, he didn't. Don't be so stupid.
No, what Ben was saying was that actually we're doing a better job policing the Red Sea than we are the English Channel, and I think that that is a perfectly viable argument, because we're not policing the English Channel at all. In fact, we're saying, come one, come all, to embed board and benefits in England.
Naughty Nana, come on, what have we got?
Well, listen, I got in trouble with Gary Lineker when I said that you should turn the boats back. I agreed with Priti Patel's turn-back policy, and literally people tried to gouge my eyes out for daring to suggest it. So I'm glad that we can now calmly, not including you, Benji, but we can calmly say that turning the boats back would be a good option. The only hole in your argument is that we have huge numbers in mass legal migration, and that's our actual problem. But yeah, I'd say actually, if they don't really want to turn the boats back, put big cruise ships in there and put them on the cruise ship, and then you can turn them back.
Do you not think if Sunak tomorrow woke up and said, right, we're going to turn these boats back, no more are going to come, he'd win the election in a heartbeat?
Yeah, I think he would, but unfortunately, you know what it is, the House of Lords would probably oppose any ideas, his own MPs would all oppose it, and then we'd be in this to or fro thing, and nothing would happen. And then in the end, the Home Secretary, whoever would be fired, and they'd have the Home Secretary number 10.
There's absolutely no political will in the Conservative Party to suspend or ignore bad international law that puts our country at risk. They're all cowards. They won't upset the French. They're too scared. They want to schmooze with their international pals and drink champagne at the Foreign Office while talking about the deplorables and laughing at us.
I'm sorry, Belinda, this might pass for a good policy in Reform UK, but in the real world, how exactly are you going to get the French to comply with this, to not just ignore those boats to go swanning back into our waters? Why would they want to work with us on this when you treat them like that?
Well, I'd say the French have recently sent back terrorist criminals against EU law because they've given that the burden, done what's best for their country, so we can just follow their example. Secondly, I don't think the £500 million we've given to the French, they've done diddly squat with it. We're literally paying for them to keep the problem going.
They've been partying. Have you seen the French border force partying when they're meant to be on shift? Darren, you had something to say.
Oh, I was going to make that point, that we've given them £500 million, and Benjamin saying, oh, aren't we treating Mr Macron absolutely appallingly? I bet you wouldn't mind £500 million. I don't think you'd be saying that GB News were treating you appallingly if they gave you that. Would you?
You assume I haven't had £500 million, but look, no, I'd look a lot better if I had. Look, the fact is that you can't, we might be an island, but we can't turn these boats back without other countries having an agreement.
No, it's precisely because we are an island that we can do that.
But we can't, because there's nothing to say that they'd comply with what we're doing. And I think it's completely unrealistic. I think Sir Keir Starmer's plan to say that we take a set amount in an agreement with France would see them have this situation.
We don't want any, Benjamin. We don't want any legal migrants or illegal migrants.
Sir Keir Starmer's plan is to bend over and ask Mr Macron how much he wants for the pleasure.
I'm sorry, but that's a deplorable thing to say. We're
full.
Take refugees.
Britain is full. There's no schools, there's no houses, there's no GPs.
Yeah, but that's...
Well, I tell you what, a lot of people who work in GPs in particular weren't born here, so, you take the migrants away.
But they didn't come here on a boat, though. A lot of them didn't come through...
I couldn't care less if they're white Americans, white Poles. It's not about race, it's not about
I tell you what, that's wrong, because...
We are full. Britain is full to the rafters. There's no infrastructure. Yes, because of the Tories, but there's no infrastructure. There's nothing here to accommodate them. We don't want illegal boats, we don't want small boats, we don't want legal migration either, unless it's capped at the tens of thousands.
Yeah, they need to do it properly. If they're going to do legal migration, just do it properly. 700,000 people coming here legally is obviously not working, so they need to decide
Darren,
what skills we need.
Very briefly, were you a bit despondent today seeing these first images of those boats arriving in Kent?
I mean, I wish I was as sure as winning the lottery, because I'd put it on and play it. I mean, we all knew this was going to happen. We all knew there was going to be total inaction. And I'm afraid to say, Benjamin there speaks of doing more with the EU. Under the Dublin Convention, which is the Returns Convention, we actually sent back, we received more back than we actually sent.
I tell you what, if you take that view, then you definitely shouldn't agree with the Rwanda policy, because that says if they go to Rwanda, commit a crime, we have to take them. So the only ones we get are the criminals.
Right.
And I tell you, that's a stupid policy.
OK, feisty start. I think we can conclude from that we'll send Benjamin on a small dinghy over the Channel to France. Up next, it's Belinda. Go away, Belinda. What's grinding your gears this week?
Right, well, the world is becoming more dangerous. The West looks divided and weak, and those hostile to us are rubbing their hands with glee. It is time to arm Britain, arm it up to the hilt, bring back a form of national service, teach loyalty, allegiance, national unity in schools, strip out the poisonous woke culture that is emasculating our military, invest in and expand our armed forces and make them once again feared and respected around the world. It is the least our government owes this country and our brave servicemen and women. And yet our government is forever cutting, slashing, stripping our armed forces down while infecting it with woke nonsense. Is it any wonder they are facing a staffing crisis? UK aircraft carriers can't even be used at the moment because of staffing issues. Yes, recruitment to the Royal Navy and Royal Marines is down 22%. Couple this with Defence Secretary Grant Shapps voicing his concerns that the makeup of the military was not diverse enough and did not reflect wider society. Our leaders are making us look weak to our enemies. I don't want our armed forces to reflect wider society. I want it to reflect the best of the best, the who dares wins, Rambos, the peak of human physical fitness, bravery and quick thinking. Government needs to promote this, and instead of funneling billions out of the country to other causes, we must now invest and boost UK's defence in this ever ever-fractious world, our country depends on it.
Amen. Linda.
I feel so strongly, especially at a time we're opening our borders to the world's conflicts and rivalries, at a time we've got so much, the terrorist threat has gone up, we've got the issue in the Red Sea at the moment. It is frightening that since 2010, the Conservative government has stripped our defence of billions, and now Grant Shapps is concerned that, you know, diversity is an issue.
As you said, this situation in the Red Sea right now, we've got 2 aircraft carriers stuck in Portsmouth because we haven't got enough F-35 jets to equip them with. We've got 8 jets on HMS Queen Elizabeth when we should have something about 35, and yet we're steaming into the Red Sea, as we should be, by the way, quite rightly, on the coattails of America. We are ill-equipped to defend ourselves, and it's a national embarrassment that we've got, for example, the RAF focused on wokery and wackery, as our man Darren would say here. They had to apologise last year for excluding white pilots from recruitment
160.
schemes.
The RAF discriminated against 160 white candidates, and in fact, the woman in charge quit because she was so upset about the discrimination against white people in the RAF. What a disgusting thing to do to our ancestors' memories when our graveyards are packed full of white men who've served our country.
If our armed services don't look like the country, then we have to ask ourselves why. It's probably because they're places where misogyny and sexism is rife, where racism is a problem. We know that's been an issue in things like the armed forces.
I think that's a load of...
I think you're catastrophising it. Come on.
I don't.
Look, the problem we have...
Only a few months ago, a report from the Red Arrows, a part of the RAF, found that it had widespread sexism and misogyny that was putting female pilots off joining, and some of them were leaving because of that. They're right to tackle those problems because we have a recruitment problem in our armed forces. Not so many young people want to do it, so we should reach out to other groups that aren't white blokes that look like Ben Leo.
Oh, no, listen, the problem we have with the armed forces is not just because of, you know, the recruitment crisis. It's the fact that we continuously do Britain down, and who would be proud and want to represent this country? It's absurd. Every time you say you're proud to be British, at one point the flag was not allowed. If you say that you're British and you're proud of it, you're told you're a racist. Why would anybody want to be part of the armed forces? And that's the misogyny and all the other stuff. It's in everything. The police force, it's in every
so that's
single...
okay,
No,
then.
but I'm saying that it's not particularly... That's not a unique characteristic of the armed forces.
You're not going to live in a perfect PC woke world where there's no, you know, a small bunch of people.
You might not care about bigotry because you're not affected by it.
He didn't say he doesn't care about it.
That's what you seem to call a...
White working class kids in this country are some of the most underprivileged people going in the UK. Darren, isn't it a disservice to our brave servicemen and women that they are so ill-equipped in such an embarrassing fashion?
It absolutely is. You know, I'm always, when we have these discussions, reminded of my grandfather's only trip abroad, and that was to serve in the Korean War. And I very much doubt that the armed forces back then was concerned that it didn't quite look like a Dove sodding advert. You know, one of those telly adverts where there's more diversity than a Benjamin Butterworth
Iran
sort of
and Putin must be laughing at us.
Oh, they are.
It's absurd. And I just do think that if we look at the fundamentals of potentially decommissioning 2 ships within the Royal Navy because we haven't got the personnel to staff it, and then Benjamin Butterworth's turning around saying,
But your argument doesn't make sense,
driving women away.
I don't want the armed forces to be 51% women, thank you very much. Women can make excellent soldiers, unbelievable warriors, but not many of them can compete with the best of the best men, nor want to, thank you very much. So the idea that I need female representation to feel this country is taken over is absolute rubbish. And also, sack sexists, sack racists, get rid of them. You don't have to discriminate against white men.
But it's a culture that when you have organisations dominated by heterosexual white men, that happens.
Thank God.
And you talk
Thank
about
God for these
ships
strong
being...
white men. I love you. Thank you for your service, and please keep fighting for our country. I love you. Do not listen to this rubbish. Keep being alpha.
Well, you might be a
male.
suck-up to bigoted men, but I won't be, because the fact is, when you talk about...
She's not called Queen Gammon for nothing.
When you talk about decommissioned ships, the lack of people wanting to go into that line of work is because, you know, people don't want to come forward. If you make it more welcoming, if you encourage women, other minority groups to feel safe, to feel prosperous in that environment, then maybe those ships wouldn't be decommissioned. Your argument
we're an embarrassment.
is flawed.
We're an embarrassment to the rest of the world. Can you imagine Putin must be laughing the fact that we couldn't even staff our own ships to come and fight a war or to get involved in conflict. This is not a good look for this country. We need to sort it out.
And
national service is the first thing.
I wanted to join the Navy when I was 16, and I don't have GCSE.
Why don't you join?
So
but instead, you thought you'd sit in TV studios. Right. I don't think I'd be wanted.
There we go.
I think it's in the nation's
you're the
interest,
perfect
but I
one
don't.
for it.
Still to come tonight. Fireworks. Still to come, the wokest man in Britain, Benjamin Butterworth, has his say on whether Prince Andrew should be evicted from Royal Lodge in Windsor Park. This is the Saturday 5. Stay with us.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel. Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK. We're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in my big opinion, the post office scandal proves ordinary people don't stand a chance against the governing elite. People power is dead. Will the post office ever recover its reputation? I'll be asking former government minister Edwina Currie, plus top royal insider Lady Victoria Harvey and radio and TV legend Mike Reid. It's your perfect Saturday night in. Mark Dolan tonight. We're live at 9.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Top show, by the way, coming up with Mark Dolan at 9 o'clock. Do not miss. As always, thanks for your emails. Should we get stuck into a couple of them? Kez says, turning flimsy boats back is dangerous. Illegal migrants in the Channel need saving, then taking back to France. Well, Kez, what they did in Australia was they took them out the flimsy boats and put them into unsinkable lifeboats. So I'm suggesting we should do the same thing. Steve says, yes, we can turn them back. We managed to find them to bring them here quick enough. So I'm sure we can find them to send them back to France. And Belinda, some love for you, coming from Alan. 100% agree with you, Belinda. We must increase the strength of our armed forces. Bin the woke agenda. Amen. Alan, good lad. Now, it's time for our next debate. Darren, what's been on your mind this week?
Well, where do I start? Right, I want to talk to you about a really important theme. Since October the 7th, which was the Israel attack, the massacre that took place at the hands of Hamas, London has been hijacked by sympathisers of Islamist extremism. And it's a sad reality for our historic city. Every week now, you hear chants of jihad and intifada, and they resonate through the streets. If you ask me, it's a grim reminder of the ideologies seeping into our society. John Woodcock, he's now called Lord Walney, and a former Labour MP, he's demanding accountability. And I think he's spot on. He insists that these weekly disruptions, a blatant display of Jew hate, shouldn't be the British taxpayers' burden. And I say I agree. Why should Sharon in Scarborough or any law-abiding Brit foot the bill for this? Today, 1,700 police officers from across the country were deployed to police these processions, a gross misallocation of resources that could be better used tackling real crime. The leaflets distributed celebrating Hamas, they're not just tactless, but a blatant endorsement of terror, a mockery of our values and our laws. These aren't the actions of progressives, that's what they're calling themselves. They're the hallmarks of barbarism. The crowd's eagerness to attack unarmed cargo ships and their disdain for the UK and the USA illustrate a dangerous shift in narrative. Standing there with a thanks to Yemen. Wow. Standing against terrorism, once a common virtue, it's now been overshadowed by support for groups like the Houthis, who've reintroduced slavery in Yemen and systemically violate the rights of women and girls. How progressive. London, now a breeding ground for these hate marches, is being funded by us, the taxpayers elsewhere. And I say it's high time we all said, not in my name, cheers very much.
Darren, you said Yemen with such gusto there. Can we hear it again?
Yemen!
Well, it wasn't quite the same as the first time.
Oh, no.
You said it Yemen.
Right, OK. Well, speaking of Yemen, I mean, even, Benjamin, you are actually pretty good. I retweeted you earlier because you had said...
There's the first.
I forget what it was.
Well, I'll say it.
Yes,
well, no, you used that image of the person saying, thank you, Yemen, which is utterly shocking because how notable that those people who so riotously attacked Israel for the loss of life in Gaza now found themselves supporting the Houthi rebels, where far more than 8,000 Muslims have been killed in Yemen in order for them to take over what had been a democratically elected government. And it seems like those people that were taking the moral high ground in their attacks on Israel and the tragic loss of life there's been in that part of the world now don't care about the morality at all, or invasion at all, or bombing at all. Actually, what they hate is they're anti-Semite and they hate the West.
That's a really interesting point, Belinda, because I saw one of the activists who's put together the events today was doing an interview with the Chinese state television for Europe. And I thought, hang on a minute, you're all right doing Chinese state television, despite what the Chinese have done to the Uyghur Muslims, but you're campaigning on the behalf of Muslims, you say, and not against, well, in favour of what I view as vehement Jew hate.
Yeah.
And that's what it is, isn't it? This is ultimately what this boils down to.
You don't see protests against all the horrific deaths in Syria, the discrimination of Muslims in China. You don't see any of it. My God, the Islamist terror has been a curse on this world, from the Christians being slaughtered in Nigeria by Boko Haram to the Al-Shabaab to Al-Qaeda. I mean, Islamist terror has now got its useful idiots on the streets of this country, and I'm sick to death of seeing these protests. I don't think they should get money from the taxpayer. I'm actually sick to death of seeing the Palestinian flag, not because I don't have huge compassion for all those innocent who are being harmed, but because it is so strong strongly associated with Islamist terror and those who apologise for Islamist terror and excuse Islamist terror. And you see a lot of that on the marches and anti-Semitism. It needs to be out of our country, out of our streets. Bring the English flag back for once.
Well, I agree.
Well,
Nana, you on your show since October the 7th have always highlighted the fact that actually Jews in Britain don't feel safe, and especially in London.
Yeah.
Do you think London's lost?
Well, I think it is truly lost. I don't know what has happened to people. I'm sick to my back teeth. Sometimes when I'm listening to some radio shows or whatever, none here on GB News, I might add, and you're hearing people call up and they're in support of the people of Gaza. In the end, though, you start listening and gradually they get to the crux of it where they're almost excusing October the 7th as though it didn't happen. They've forgotten all about it and they're already now, saying, oh, we don't want anyone to die and all this. But really, ultimately, behind it is some sort of anti-Semitism.
Yes.
And I've never seen this before. I have, as a black woman, not faced as much racism as I've seen anti-Semitism in this country, and I'm completely shocked by it. I had no idea that this is what it was all about. And now when I see people, you have queers for Palestine, it's like, hold on a minute. Have you seen what they have done to some gay people? Come on. You have people who don't understand what they're saying when they're chanting from the river to the sea. They don't know what it means. They're just getting onto the bandwagon of something. And I think if you look at it, it's actually quite ugly.
Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, the people that go onto the streets of London and support Hamas, and even today trying to big up the Houthi rebels, they might be British on paper, but they're not displaying British values and British pride and idealisms. One thing I will say, though, of course, Israel has the right to defend itself. I've said that since the start. However, there is growing pressure now and even a growing consciousness among world leaders. You had Joe Biden a couple of weeks back, Ben Wallace, David Cameron, all saying now that
the consciousness of these world leaders, these people who've been behind so many wars themselves. Joe Biden, the warmonger. I mean...
Well, let me finish. I was going on to the point that, according to Hamas, and actually the UN seems to agree with a rough kind of figure, that some 8,000 children have now died in Palestine, and I just don't know how long Israel can continue.
But those are any death of a child is obviously appalling in war.
Yeah.
Those are figures from Hamas. You hear this phrase,
whether it's 1 or 8,000, it doesn't matter.
The Gaza Health Ministry. The Gaza Health Ministry is the PR arm of Hamas. It is a totally made up.
As I said, the UN has pretty much agreed with it. They said 1,000.
Oh, well, of course they have, because you currently have the UN hosting South Africa's farcical genocidal claim.
Benjamin,
in which, just to say, South Africa, a country that had no problem and abstained on Russia invading Ukraine and murdering innocent Ukrainian children and men and women. They had no problem with that. They were one of a handful of countries to abstain.
You have South African politicians standing up and saying we kill the white people, kill the white farmers. Yeah. And now they're turning around and accusing Israel.
The only thing I would disagree, and I would disagree with Nana,
briefly,
is this idea that London is lost is not fair, because I think the vast majority of people in London, as in Britain, do not take these views, even if they are loud.
Go out on the weekend.
Stop.
Yeah, the protests.
I don't think protests should stop, because that's not
exactly.
Okay.
Pay for them themselves.
That's how a democratic country works.
Right, we're going to move on. I would, on the final point, I'm presenting this show, so I'm going to get the final point in. I would say London is lost. It doesn't feel like an English city, and I've said it on this show before. Anyway, still to come tonight, Nana, a queer, will be discussing the dangers of electric vehicles, and Benjamin gets stuck into Prince Andrew and the Royal Lodge. Should he be kicked out? More of that after this. Stay with us.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5, very feisty show, and as always we appreciate your emails as well, even the nasty ones. Let's grab a couple now. Sue says, tell the immigrants they'll have to do 2 years national service when they get here. I bet that would stop the influx and act as a deterrent. Not a bad idea. I actually think we should bring that back for national service for kids. 16 to 18-year-olds might teach these Gen Zers a thing or two. And Shell says, good evening, Shell. There's hate speech, hateful chants, support for Islamists, calls for jihad, and now support for the Houthis going on in there.
That's ridiculous, isn't it?
This is not London anymore. How is this legal? It's disgusting. That's the point, Anna, isn't it? It's got such a ridiculous point that it's just laughable.
But these people, if they saw them, would shoot them anyway. These people who supposedly they think they support.
That woman holding up the Yemen sign, darling, you'd be absolutely imprisoned and married off at 8 years old if you're in Yemen, mate.
We had one other email saying, are Darren and Benjamin a couple? Not sure if there's some flirtation going on there.
We're divorced.
And also, when is Benjamin going to lay into the pensioners? Well, I can tell you now, he's up next and he's going to lay into Prince Andrew, as it is, and ask whether he should be evicted from his royal house in Windsor Great Park. Take it away, Benjamin.
Yeah, he's not quite a pensioner, but he is getting on my nerves nonetheless. I think it's about time we ended the farce of Prince Andrew and his royal perks. We've had yet another week of appalling allegations about the prince. It was claimed this week that he had massages daily while on the island of Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced paedophile that he kept a friendship with. There were even disputed claims about sex videos of the prince. How disgusting. Now, as you always have to say, he denies all these claims very strongly, and yet the claims keep coming. And this is embarrassing our royal family. He is undermining the entire institution. And while doing so, the royals, us, our money, are putting him up in a 30-room royal lodge. Now, this is a disgrace. Quite frankly, apparently he's been hiding in one room in that royal lodge for the past week because he was so nervous about the allegations that came out. Look, it's a disgrace that he gets a grace and favour house from taxpayers and from the royal family. I think it's about time that the King used his sausage fingers to kick out Prince Andrew from his freebie home. In fact, anyone else that doesn't have a job to go to would be on a council estate in Slough. I think for the sake of the royal family, if he's to keep his job keep his title as a prince, then we stick him out on the council estate in Slough and get rid of him.
Can you stop dissing Slough, please?
He can get a job as well, actually, whilst he's at it. I'd add that in.
There's lots of jobs going.
I'll just, before you start, Benjamin, I'll just say Prince Andrew, of course, strenuously denies any allegations. He says he never even met his accuser, Virginia Giuffre.
As I said in my monologue.
Yes.
Belinda,
I don't want to get cancelled, all right?
Belinda, Belinda, what do you make of
I
this?
am no fan of Prince Andrew, but I would say this. I feel very honour-bound to our late Queen, and it's her son, and he's messed up, and I think he should go and live a quiet life somewhere away from the royal family and stop bringing its reputation into disrepute. I completely agree with that. But I think completely demonising and dehumanising a man before he's been charged, before he's been found guilty of anything, in sort of hysterical rants, not that yours was hysterical rants, Benjamin, but I'm just saying, I think we just need to be careful that, you know, it could happen to any one of us. We could suddenly have massive allegations thrown our way.
Were you on the list?
Well, no, but for example, the alleged videos and things like that, there's just no evidence. There needs to be substantial evidence, I think, before accusations can be taken seriously. I want him to disappear. I think he's doing harm to the royal family. I agree with you, but I do think we also need to edge on the side of caution when we're completely demonising the Queen's son, just because I feel loyalty to the Queen as well, to give him a more of a fairer shout.
And Darren, if you're being very, very generous to Andrew, I think his worst piece of behaviour is just being a little bit thick and stupid, isn't it? Putting yourself in that position.
Well, absolutely. But Peter
Darren or Andrew?
Peter Mandelson was photographed with Jeffrey Epstein. Should Peter Mandelson be disgraced from public life and removed all outright?
I mean, I've got a feeling that Peter Mandelson wasn't accused of having, you know, intimate moments with women on the island, given he's a homosexual.
But what's the actual accusation that you're saying should remove Prince Andrew from public life?
Well, the accusations, which again he denies, but for which he paid $12 million or pounds to Virginia Giuffre over her claims of sleeping with her when he was 17.
You know without a shadow of doubt that they are absolutely true.
I think the people in this country have made their mind up. And the fact is that when you have that scenario, every time he is seen, and he was seen today doing a shooting weekend with friends, you know, what a pompous guy.
Why can't he go shooting with friends?
Well, actually, I think that he is disgracing the royal family every time he shows his face, and he refuses to leave public life as much as we've desired it. The arrogant and stupid buffoon is bringing down our royal family.
Sorry, going out shooting isn't exactly trooping the colour, is it?
You had a poll this week that found that 48% of people support the monarchy. The first time it's ever gone under 50%.
That was from Republic. That was from anti-monarchy campaign group Republic, who want to destroy the monarchy.
I think
that's convenient.
King needs to know some backbone. The kind of backbone that the Queen was pretty well known for, and kick out Andy.
Do you know what? Look, I think he's had a bit of a rough ride on this one because, you know, there's no proof of any of the things that have been alleged anyway, and you know, if there was any truth, then they are horrendous, but he, in a sense, could be guilty by association, which is, I think, a little bit unfair. Also, I think he paid that money because he knew his mother was dying and he didn't want her to have a rough year or so in her final moments.
Paid it.
No, but they paid it. He allowed it to go that way instead of just, you know, fighting the charges. And but so I think that's, you know, he did what he could.
He has no royal duties now. He's been relieved of all of those. And so why should someone that isn't doing any work for the British public get such a fancy house on the dime of
Why should anyone get a fancy house? I mean, he is a prince by birth. It's not his fault.
I do agree that he shouldn't have the house. His reputation has been so damaged by this that he now can't perform any of the duties that he was literally born to do.
His reputation is damaged by the fact that he's an idiot, right? Yeah. Well, Emily Maitlis interview told us all you
But what do you want? Should we whip him in the streets?
No,
what will be...
That's what Jeremy Clarkson would do.
Darren, the point is, as I said a second ago, if you're being very, very generous to Andrew, it's that he's just been incredibly thick and stupid, much like Prince Harry a lot of the time. He just hasn't got that shrewdness about him of how to behave as a royal. He hung out with Epstein a couple of years at least after Epstein was first prosecuted for messing around with underage or trafficked girls. That displays a severe lack of judgment, and for that alone, he risks bringing down the monarchy and at best clouding the monarchy in a cloud of disgrace and embarrassment. So he needs to drop the arrogance and just Go off, as Benjamin said. Go off somewhere.
But he has. What else do you want him to do?
He hasn't. There's rumours that he needs
Should
to get...
we lock him in the Tower of London?
He needs to listen to his brother, the King, and get out of Royal Lodge, first of all. He's rattling around in that 8-bedroom mansion/cottage.
30 bedroom.
30 bedroom. Yeah, just drop the arrogance, take the loss, and just scuttle off somewhere and let your brother, the King, enjoy his reign that he's waited so long for without your nonsense and also Harry's nonsense. But let's draw a line under that. Up next, it's Nana, a queer, talking about the dangers of electric vehicles. Haven't you seen all those bus fires in London recently? I spoke to a guy at the gym earlier. He said he bought an electric, I won't name the brand in case they sue us, an electric car which blew up on the motorway. More of that after the break. You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News. Stay with us.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News. Let's get stuck into more of your emails. Some funny ones here, actually. Adrian, good evening, my friend. He says, there's a job in Pizza Hut, Tunbridge Wells, for a trainee kitchen porter if Prince Andrew wants to start there. I suspect he'd be all right with the American hot, considering he doesn't sweat. Gordon says, Andrew was and is a war hero. You can't take that away from him. Good point, we'll give him that. Richard says, it's all based on allegations and gossip. We need facts. And finally, Ian says, send him to Rwanda. Right, who's up next? I think it's our lovely Nana Akweer, Naughty Nana, as I've been calling her tonight. It's time for Nana to get stuck into electric vehicles. Take it away, my friend.
Now, listen, if somebody said to you, I have a cunning plan, my lord. I'm going to invent a car that is 10 times heavier than any car. You plug it in like you do like your iPhone, and it will burn through your rubber tyres faster than you can say Jack Robertson. You'd say, and And you can have this thing for about £40,000, but whilst you're in it, don't switch on the lights, don't put on the music. Whatever you do, don't put on the heater, because you see how far it said you could go? Well, you're not going to go that far if all of that stuff is on. And you're going to have a form of anxiety, something you've never even thought of, range anxiety, where it tells you you can go 300 miles, but once you've switched on all the stuff, it'll go half that distance. Would you buy into it? Because this is what they're selling us. And the worst thing about it, on top of all of this, at some point, at some time, this thing can just explode. Because it seems that that's what's happened to 2 buses this week. On Thursday, it was a full electric bus that caught fire in London. And on Friday, it was one of those hybrid type things. So all of these type cars with batteries, and let's not be generous and call them electric cars, let's call them what they are, battery-operated vehicles. And God help you if one of those catches fire, because you know what? I don't know how the fire brigade are going to deal with them when we've got helium cars, petrol cars and electric cars on the road. What are you going to use? Because once these things catch fire, electric cars simply have to burn out. You have to wait for that fire to go out. That's the problem with them. These cars are catching fire on people's forecourts, in people's garages, they're burning people's houses, and you're saying that we should have these by 2030, 2035, and by 2050 we're supposed to reach that carbon net zero target. It is utter madness. I, for one, am sticking with my Citroën C1 and its petrol.
Yeah, you go, Nana. You go, Nana. So my view on it is the same as... my view on it is that when we had the transition from vinyl records to CDs, I loved picking up a vinyl and feeling it and putting the needle down. With electric cars against normal cars, petrol, diesel cars, you don't have the, you know, the roar of the engine and the vibrations and the smell. I love the smell of petrol. It's one of my favourite smells. And also, they just don't work either. And I wouldn't be surprised if, come 2035, they push back the ban on diesel and electric petrol cars even further.
Like Scooby-Doo cars,
perfume business went down, Ben.
But they're like Scooby-Doo cars. You know, they are now more like one unit. So if the battery goes, it's like your phone. You just get a new one.
Although,
how is that a good thing?
I will say that our producer, before we went on air, just told us that he's bought himself an electric car, and he says it was really good value. And I trust him because he's from the northeast.
Well, I have to say, as a professional,
I think he's completely wrong, and I think that he hasn't. How long has he had it for?
He's getting it on Monday.
Yeah, well, he hasn't. He's only just getting it on Monday. A lot of people get very excited by these cars. They get them, and then they think,
He'll be on fire next week.
I'm going back to diesel.
Or maybe he's just driving little bits around London.
Belinda, do you drive?
Well, no, I was about to say I'm a professional pedestrian, and the thing I don't like about electric cars is that they're silent. Is that they're quiet.
Really good point.
And I am so busy, with the kids and making sure everyone's crossing and everything. You know, I loved hearing cars coming up, but no, they're silent. Also, aren't they supposed to be like environmentally friendly? But it's like child slavery to get the cobalt out of the ground to feed these batteries. I mean, the whole thing is just a bit of a con, really.
So who drives here, by the way? Is it just me? You drive as well?
I'm driven.
You're driven.
Of course.
He's driving us all mad.
Driven by wokery.
Yeah, that's a very good one. But I have to say, actually, I was in an electric car for about 2 hours the other week, and I got really sick. And I was saying it to the driver, and he said that that's a problem he'd had with electric cars, with customers getting particularly car sick in them.
All your lot would say this is...
I don't know, but it's happened a few times now, and the driver confirmed it. But look, these are just aspects of developing the technology. The fact is that we shouldn't be relying on oil and petrol to be able to get around. The control that takes out of our hands, the lack of resource, the expense. I think this is the way forward. It's cleaner and more reliable.
It's not cleaner.
Cleaner for who? There's child labour at one end, getting all the resources. There's a lot of carbon being produced to produce these actual things. I mean, how do you think all the components, what it's made out of, requires carbon to create it?
I can tell you're very principled, Nana, so I imagine you don't have a phone or a laptop.
No, I use all of it. I'm not complaining about it. I'm saying you're the one that's being principled.
It's just the car when you care about child labour.
No, you're the one that's being principled about it.
If the little kids make you a quick phone, is that...
I'm talking about the principle of people saying that this is good for the environment. It's not good for the environment. It's not good for the young people. It's not good for the child labour. It's terrible.
The rental giant Hertz in the United States of America, they had 20,000 electric vehicles, and they're replacing every single one of them with petrol.
Of course
That tells me me that we've gone too far too fast. I agree with Benjamin to a certain extent that the technology and choice is a good thing for the consumer. Our producer should be absolutely free to go off and buy himself an electric car should he fancy one. But I don't think we should be mandating.
Well, that's the point.
That everyone get
That's
them in.
absolutely right. We should decide. We should choose whether we want to buy it or not. And if we want to buy it, then we should be able to buy it. And petrol and diesel should remain.
And if you want to be a petrol head, all freedom to you.
Yeah.
And also, by the way, electric cars at the moment are just simply unaffordable for most people. I think the cheapest Tesla's about 40 grand.
They are. They're expensive. But also, that's why the target's, 2035 by now to bring in electric cars. That will massively reduce the cost as demand goes up and scale goes up. And then we'll be able to be environmentally friendly and have low costs.
All right.
What about the charging units?
I think
there will be when it's mandatory.
I think I'll stick with the Range Rovers and the gas-guzzling Defenders, if you ask me. Anyway, that's all we've got time for tonight. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for your emails, and sorry we couldn't read them all out. From one Leo to another, up next is Leo Curse with the Saturday Night Showdown. We're back next week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Fortry here of a GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. We've got a mixture of variable cloud and some clear spells to end this first half of the weekend, and that is quite key in terms of what conditions you will see overnight. Where you do see some of those clearer spells, temperatures could just drop off a touch with some pockets of frost developing, mist and fog patches as well. But those areas that hold on to the cloud will probably see temperatures just hold up slightly above freezing. Many of our towns and cities around 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. So not a widespread frost, but still a chilly start to Sunday morning. A reasonable amount of cloud holding on for Wales, central southern England throughout Sunday as well. A few sunnier breaks to watch out for, but it's the northern half of the UK where we'll see some slightly more prolonged areas of sunshine. Showers, though, across northern Scotland will be falling as snow, even to lower levels. Combine that with some very strong winds across the northeast. They've got the risk of drifting snow and feeling very bitter in those winds, even towards the south. A fairly cold day, 6-7 degrees Celsius. But it's that very cold Arctic air in the north that's going to sweep its way southwards over the course of Sunday and into Monday. Those blue colours covering the entirety of the UK. So some of us will certainly have to scrape the cars the first thing on Monday morning. The showers will be continuing to push their way into the north, primarily from northern Scotland, but we'll see also some snow showers for Northern Ireland, perhaps a few for the far west of Wales, southwest England, as well as skirting into Humberside and parts of Norfolk as well. Further inland, widespread blue skies, but feeling very cold, and the cold conditions continue right throughout the week. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK. We're ready to